Hi, and welcome to another episode from Live Healthy Now. Today, I've got an amazing guest with me who's going to share her story. And I just want to call out right at the very start that I'm sure this episode is going to be a pretty raw and emotional one, as we hear from Sarah how when you face one of life's biggest adversities, you can learn how to use it to create a healthy and happy life on the other side. We will be talking about death, bereavement and tragedy. So please, if any of these are a trigger for you, you might want to skip this episode. So what Sarah experienced might not happen to many of us. However, the subject of suffering unexpected loss or experiencing a significant sudden trauma is one that can affect many of us. So we want to help you learn today how even when life feels like it's dealt you a pretty shit card, you can continue, you can keep moving forward, you can learn to love your life again, and you can do this by taking the right steps to take care of yourself. So I have Sarah Miller with me today. Thanks so much for joining me, Sarah. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, thanks, Nicola. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So to kick off, I'd love to know a little bit about your healthy lifestyle. So I'd like you to tell me, what's your favourite healthy habit?
This one's actually a very easy question for me to answer. So in the past, I have tried different kind of meditation techniques, and nothing has ever really sat right with me, like a formal meditation practice that I couldn't fit into my life. And that was until I found something called HeartMath, and I am in love with it. So what it is, it's a system where it regulates your nervous system. It's similar to meditation and relaxation, but it keeps you in a calm but alert state. And so it's a practice of like breathing and visualization technique. And I just adore it. It's like a way of connecting to my heart, and that's my safe space, I guess. And so I like to do that every day. I even do it with my daughter. So in the evening, we read bedtime stories, which is like my special space every evening. And then after that, we spend a few minutes doing HeartMath. The practice is maybe you can do 3 to 5 minutes. You can use it when you're out about in the day. And just that breathing, the connecting to your heart and truly feeling a feeling of appreciation, care, compassion, not thinking about it, but actually feeling that warmth that you get when you're doing something that you love, or you're in your favorite place, or you give someone a hug, or someone who's very special to you. And that's like a moment of almost sheer bliss, I'd say. Like all the other things in my life just kind of melt away. And I'm in this space that is a special space. And I know I can go there anytime if I'm really stressed out.
Yeah, that sounds amazing, because I think meditation is something that people either take to it or they don't. And it's very difficult, isn't it, to learn to be present? I certainly struggle with that. So HeartMath sounds like it's something that you can do without having to really take yourself into that meditative state. Is that how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why it works so well for me, because I'm one of those people that's like, go, 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 go. I don't like stopping from one thing to the next thing. And achieving Zen for me, as I would say, call it, is not something that I feel able to do as such, because I'm not wired that way. Yeah. And so I tried all these, in my search to find something, an answer, or find a way to will away the pain, or just make everything go away. Like maybe if I can find this calm space, like the world won't feel as bad for me. But I realized that it wasn't about that. It was about living alongside the pain that I was going through, and that HeartMath was a way of me having a moment away from that, but it wasn't taking away any of the pain of what I was going through. And so it is very calming, but you can do it while you're standing in the shopping aisle for waiting to get checked out, or you can do it when you're taking a walk. It's breathing in that feeling of love, care, and compassion. And when you do it and you're really invested in it and you really feel it, it's experiencing that feeling that is magic to me. It really is.
So it sounds like this is something that's very much part of your everyday lifestyle and routines. Yeah,
and I think a huge part of what worked well for me is, so it's a form of heart rate variability training. So you have a sensor, you attach the sensor to your t-shirt, you then attach the other side of the sensor to your ear, and it monitors your heart rate variability. So it monitors your heart rhythm patterns, which it's different to heart rate. What it is, it's actually the microseconds between each heartbeat. And within those microseconds, it looks at what your heart rate variability is doing. So the idea is that you're not hyper aroused, so like stuck in this fight, flight, or flight mode and, going crazy. And you're not suppressed and depressed, like down at the bottom of the chart, but you have like a consistent waveform. So you're alert, but you're calm. And there's a balance between your fight and flight mode and your rest and digest mode. And having that visual feedback, what I thought for me was calm but alert. In actual fact, wasn't calm but alert. So I was able to retrain myself because I'd been so stressed for so long. What I thought was this space of like, I'm okay right now, was really not what was reflecting in the graph that I was getting back for the visual feedback. And it comes with a phone app, and they have like a free heart math class that you can do online, which is incredible. I don't have enough good words to say about it.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. And it sounds as though it's something that you've really embed into your lifestyle as a habit, and one that you enjoy doing, which is something I talk about a lot, to enable things to become habits and fit into your life. There have to be things that you enjoy, don't they? And things that really flow with ease, that you're not forcing yourself to remember and have to do because they're the right thing to do. It's got to be something that you really align with and get benefit from.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And it has been forced for me in the past, but now it's so integrated, I don't even think about it. And I think part of that is that I've added it into behaviors that I already do. So I was already reading bedtime stories to my daughter anyway. And so now I just added on 3 minutes every evening, and we do heart math, and then she goes to bed. So I think adding that behavior stacking makes it so much easier to bring everything into your life, or a habit that you want to start incorporating. Just pick something you're already doing in life and connecting it together.
Yeah.
So while I drink my coffee in the morning, I'll write in my journal, for example.
Yeah. And I absolutely agree with that wholeheartedly, because that habit stacking technique is really effective, isn't it? As you say, things that you already do, like brushing your teeth or making the bed or having a shower or putting the kettle on, like a lot of people do first thing on a morning. They're things that are very ritual in your life. And so to add something new onto those is a technique that I talk about in my programs to help you build those new habits. And I love the bedtime story connection there as well. I used to absolutely love bedtime stories. So yeah, it's a great time of the day to unwind and bring it into your daughter's life as well. So thanks for sharing that. And if anybody is interested in hearing more about HeartMath, all of Sarah's info will be in the show notes. And I know that she's a pretty strong expert in HeartMath, so should be able to answer any questions if you wanted to reach out to her on that. So, Sarah, obviously what we're going to talk about today has been an absolutely life-changing event for you and your family. And I really appreciate you opening up to me on the podcast about it. I know you are very keen to share your story because the event that happened to you and your family is one that has been so significant. It's veered you onto a completely different path in your life. And it's something that I think can really inspire people listening to think about, you know, if something happens to you, which is a life-changing trauma or sudden loss or, you know, some kind of other event which brings great shock and adversity with it. What Sarah's going to share today really demonstrates how you can build resilience and you can really change what that outcome could be on the back of that event because of how you value yourself and taking care of yourself and building healthy habits. So just before we go into the story, Sarah, I'd love for you to start by just telling me what your biggest learning has been as you've worked through what can only be described as a shattering experience.
Yeah, that definitely takes some thought with that question. I would say I have always very much throughout my life tried to control everything. And I think that I believed I could, to a certain extent, you know, guide where my life was going. And I'm a planner and I like to make sure all my ducks are in a row. And this event just really showed me that life is so uncertain that really we have so little control over anything, and that it's so important to go through your days just going with the flow. And, you know, I can't change a lifetime of what I have done in the past, but I definitely am more accepting of the directions life take me in. I'm like, well, I thought I was going to do this and something else has happened. And instead of resisting that, I just tend to be like, well, I guess that's what the universe is directing me to do. So I'll go ahead and go with it. And I think sometimes if it doesn't matter there is no right or wrong, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because you may start doing something that doesn't feel right, but that's okay because it may open the doors to another opportunity. So you may find yourself in a different place and something else opens up. So I really am more accepting of whatever comes my way, and I take it and I roll with it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think on the back of what you've suffered, that is an incredible outlook and mindset to now have. And I know, having spoken to people who've also experienced quite sudden losses, that kind of mindset is something which has enabled them to be able to have acceptance and move forward and make that loss a part of who they are, but a part of their life in a way that has a positive outcome and positive, you know, future, isn't it? So, yeah, I'd love you to share more about your story and tell us, you know, what happened to you last year and the changes, obviously, that came on the back of that, because you experienced lots of changes as a result of the accident that you experienced with your daughter.
Yeah, so, you know, rewind back to May of 2021, and I was just going about a normal day, and we were visiting friends, and my daughter drowned in the pool of our friend's backyard, and unfortunately she passed away a couple of days later, which, you know, it was such a huge shock, because all we were doing was going to see friends, and the next minute my daughter is in pediatric ER, and fighting for her life. And then we had to make the decision to switch off her life support. But we knew that realistically it wasn't our Madeline who was lying in that hospital bed, because her brainwaves were not how they should have been. And so I went from having a family, 2 kids and our dog, to being just plunged into a completely chaotic situation. And that kind of compounded from there. And I very much blamed myself, and it was destroying my soul. Like, I just could not forgive myself for not being there when she needed me the most. And I didn't get there on time. I didn't even realize what was happening, or happened so quick. And so that then I was going through that, and that led to a divorce between my husband and I at the time. And then I moved house. So I had a lot of things all going on all at once. And I was really sick, and I was dealing with, suicidal thoughts. I was really in a bad place. And I've come a long way since then, and I still have a lot of pain, and I'm still figuring out who I am and who I want to become. And I don't want to paint this picture of, I went through this traumatic experience and I'm turned around and I'm some kind of magic woman who is fine now, because that's not the case. But I definitely have a lot more tools in my toolbox to manage and cope with suicidal thoughts, because sometimes I still do get them. There are times when I'm totally fine, and other times I'm not fine. And I think part of when I'm speaking, I promised myself that I would be authentic. And so I didn't want to come here today and pretend I'm all fine all day, every day, because that's not how the journey goes. But I do think that that's part of the experience, and I'm stronger for it, that I have, I do go through those thoughts, and I do have things and people that help me get through it. And then there are other times I'm like, I'm going to go conquer the world, So I like to be curious about it. It's an exciting journey. It's a painful journey. Mm-hmm. And I guess the mantra that I have adopted is to suffer better. Because when suffering is there, I can't take it away. And so how do I suffer better? How do I nurture myself? I get it wrong a lot of the times. I get it right sometimes. But I have come a long way in a year. And now I think of Madeline. Madeline was my daughter's name. And I feel like my heart's going to explode. And it's almost like I have this energy, her energy inside of me. And it's like, I imagine it's like my heart is a rainbow, and it's like bursting out with colors of energy. And I want to put my daughter's energy out into the world. And her philosophy in life was sharing is caring. And she liked to go about her days filling up other people's buckets. And, that's how I move forward, is, in honor of her and in tribute to her, of like, how can I help other people? If sharing my story helps one person, then, that's something that makes my heart more full.
Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing, Sarah. And the way that you talk about it, it is so honest and authentic, because you can feel in the words that you use and how you use them, how passionate you are about using that experience, and also Madeleine's personality and what she represented, you know, with the sharing and caring and using that energy, I think is just such a beautiful way to honour her and keep her part of your life. Because for anyone who has experienced loss, even if it isn't through a tragedy like your own circumstances, you don't get over that person's loss. You don't fix your grief or get to a point where grief's done with. What happens is you learn to make grief be a part of who you are. And that's very much why I wanted Sarah to share her story, because your loss is of the extreme. It's any parent's worst nightmare. You know, it's something that as a parent, we just don't ever want to go there, because it's, you know, as soon as you become a parent, there's always that fear hanging over you, isn't there? And, you know, you've shown that you are able to have that value of yourself and the life you've got and Madeleine's life to now start to carve this very different path. So, you know, you shared on following the loss of Madeleine, you then ended your marriage, you've moved house. I know you've had quite a lot of challenges with your physical health as well, which has affected your work. But I'd like you to share a bit about the work that you are doing now, or building up from the very beginning, to help other people who might also face these kind of you know, traumas or adversities in their life.
Yeah, so I've worked in healthcare for many years, and originally I started off in the Royal Air Force. I'm originally from the US, but from the UK, but I now live in the US. And so I came over to the US and I was working in physical therapy and, you know, really enjoying it. And then Madeleine happened, and I just knew that I had to shift my attention, I suppose, even though I was enjoying what I was doing. And so I went and I got my qualifications as a health coach, and I'm actually also trauma certified heart math educator, because I really believe in it so much. I knew I had to learn as much as I possibly could about it. And so I'm in the process of, you know, setting up Wellshine coaching. I like to call it Project Wellshine. And Project Wellshine it's basically, I work in the specialized niche of coaching with people that have been through the unexpected loss of a loved one or a traumatic experience in their past, you know, whether that be 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. That what I've been to many support groups, and what I realized was that there's so many people out there that are still living life under this imprint and heaviness of something that's happened in their past, and they're not achieving their full potential or their full health. They don't have wellness. And I was like, I have to do something to change this. I have to create something that speaks volumes to who Madeleine was, to put her energy out there, but to also help people so that they're not feeling lost in their lives. Because I think when you go through something like that, you lose your identity. You don't know who you are anymore. It feels like nobody understands you in the whole entire world. Sometimes your thoughts are so scary that you don't want to share them with anybody, because you think people will think that you're insane, you know? And so I created Project Wellshine. And then also part of that is also my dog. I have a therapy dog, and we're in the process of training, and we go out, or eventually our first rodeo is in November, and we're going to be going out and doing some therapy dog work in a family center. And that's something that we're going to be incorporating into what we do. And I would just like to have a community of people who can come together that can share their goals and their successes and their challenges in one place where people all understand each other and that heaviness of some kind of a traumatic experience in their past.
Mm. Oh, yeah, that's just incredible. And what a mission and vision to have for Project Wellshine to, really have at the very heart of it Madeleine's energy and that, desire to help others not experience the same kind of things and pain and suffering that you did. So with your story then, was there a turning point when you realised that you needed to start to take care of your well-being and to make changes?
Yeah, for sure. So, I was in a really bad space, and I did attempt suicide. And I guess during that moment, I was, what have I done? I don't want to live in this situation, but I don't want to die either. Mm-hmm. And I did get given a second chance, and I'm working on myself. But I think the biggest thing was I had been in many support groups, and I found like I was missing a certain thing. And I think part of it was I was in support groups with people that had experienced the loss of a loved one, but I had this hanging over me, this guilt and shame of, well, why didn't I check that the back door was locked? Because then she wouldn't have been able to get out by accident, And so I had so much shame on myself. I felt like I was kind of almost mismatched, and I was getting stuff from the group, but I was missing that piece. And then I found a group called Accidental Impacts. And that was a huge turning point for me, because I went to my first meeting, and, it was a Zoom meeting, and there was maybe about, from all over the world, I would say there was maybe like 60 people in this meeting. And I was sitting there in this room, or Zoom room full of people. And all I could think about as this meeting progressed was that I was sitting in a room full of really good-hearted people. And I didn't think about one of those people, you're at fault, you're to blame, and just being able to step outside myself and apply that situation to somebody else, and me not thinking, well, it was your fault, your fault that whoever died or your loved one died. It took that much for me to finally be able to start to see that Madeleine's death was an accident. But before that, I was surrounded by love and support from people I knew, like, you're an amazing mom, you're this, you're that. But I couldn't hear any of it, because in my head, all I could hear was, you're a killer. It's your fault. Your daughter's dead. Why weren't you there? Why didn't you do this? You should have done that. You should have done that. And it was relentless. Like, it was constantly there. And then I sat in there with this group of people, and it was such a powerful moment. And I still attend that group now. And I get a lot from that. And I think there's power in finding your tribe. And I still attend bereavement support groups as well. And that's a different tribe that I get different advice or different support from. And so I would say it came from human connection.
And I think you mentioned there really about a mindset shift, you know, that you compared yourself and the way you were thinking about yourself to how you were thinking and not judging anybody else who was in that call. And, you know, we talk a lot in health and wellness as coaches about the mindset, because so much of what we're looking to change in our lives and make better starts with the mindset, doesn't it? And have you found that that's been something that has been like the biggest driver and focus for you as you go through this journey of recovery?
Yes, absolutely. I still think I do jump. I have a very strong inner critic, and my natural tendency is to jump to that. But now I've done a lot of work on self-compassion as well. And I now have this voice that is with me all the time that says, what would you tell a good friend? And having that just in the back of my mind and supporting like the piece of me that my heart knows who I am to the core, and saying, well, no, you're not what you tell yourself. Or sometimes it's not as strong as that, but I just have always, what would you tell a friend? And I'm an empath, and I'm so compassionate for other people. I just want the best for everybody in the world. And applying that to myself is difficult, but having that undertone in the back of my mind, it really just helps so much.
Yeah. And is there any kind of technique or habit that you've built with being able to bring that self-compassion in? Because I can imagine that there's, especially earlier in your recovery process, that you needed that so much. How do you then, make sure that you are recognizing those points that you need to have that self-compassion?
Sure. So I'm a huge fan of Christina Neff, and I'm going through one of her self-compassion classes, and there are 3 components that make up self-compassion. Overall, basically, self-compassion is treating yourself with the same warmth, kindness, love, and wish to alleviate suffering as you would a good friend. And I think in life, in society, we're all very, very good at giving other people compassion, but we're all very challenged at giving ourselves compassion. So the self-compassion there are 3 things that are made up, 3 ingredients, I guess you would say. So you have your mindfulness. So that's giving yourself space between your thoughts and your response, which I have really worked hard at this one, because, as I said, I kind of jumped straight to that inner critic. But I've been able to attach that inner critic voice to my, what would you tell a friend? Mm. So it now comes in pairs. And the second component to that is common humanity. And what I've found is, in being real and being authentic, and at first when it happened, I tried to pretend that I was fine, and I threw myself back into work, and I'm fine, I'm just getting on with life. And it wasn't working. I got very sick. And the more I opened up, and the more in even just random conversations that I may mention something, I realized that in me opening up, other people opened up to me and would tell me the most random of things, and that suffering is everywhere. So we all suffer. My adversity is not any better or worse than anybody else's, because that feeling of suffering, whether that's because it's the death of someone you love, or because you got divorced, that sense of suffering is still a sense of suffering, and we all suffer. And so having that in the back of your mind is another component of self-compassion. And then finally, the third component, and they don't come in any order, but the third component is self-kindness. And so for this one, I had to work through thoughts and ideas, because I had to come up with a phrase that felt authentic to me. And the one I came up with that really resonated with me was suffer better, nurture yourself. So it's as simple as that. Is I have my, what would you say to my friend, and suffer better, nurture me. And that they just kind of run in the undertones of my days and keep me grounded for the most part. So yeah, it's been quite the journey.
Yeah. And that was a really good explanation of compassion, because I wrote a blog about this actually just a few weeks ago, in that I think it's often the missing piece of the wellbeing puzzle, because you can have people who do all of the things they think you're supposed to do, like eat well, hydrate, move your body, sleep. But if you aren't compassionate to yourself, what's going on in your mind is really still affecting your body, and it's affecting how happy and how well you feel overall, isn't it? So do you find that self-compassion is a key component for anyone who wants to improve how well and happy they feel?
I think it's something that definitely needs to be worked on, but I think that it takes a lot of time to find what works well for you. And I think with my personal journey, I was wanting to will away or avoid or suppress emotions or suppress my inner critic. But I realized that all that does is compound it.
Yeah.
And it almost turns it into a poison in your body, because if you're not letting it out, then it has nowhere to go. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the lady said that it's like emotional constipation. And it made such sense to me, because it's like it's all getting backed up. The more you stuff it away, the more you stuff it away. And I think self-compassion is a really good gateway into that, to be able to notice what you're feeling, to not have to stuff it away, and to allow it to. It's very hard to accept it, but to give recognition to the fact and acknowledge that you're thinking that thought, and then having some kind of response that sits well with you. So, for example, saying, I'm suffering right now, I'm here for you. Or, I'm in pain right now, what do I need? So recognizing and giving that emotion or that feeling a name, and then giving yourself some kind of compassionate phrase afterwards that is going to kind of give yourself that inner hug, and extending yourself that inner love. But it takes a lot of work to get there. It doesn't just magically happen overnight, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot in self-compassion.
Yeah. It's about being your own supporter and friend, isn't it? As you said, we are very quick and usually very comfortable with being very negative towards ourselves in whatever context that might be. But if we think about speaking that way to someone we love, whether that's a family member or friend or even a work colleague, you just wouldn't do that, would you? You'd get probably quite an intense response from someone if you treat them the way that you treat yourself. So I do talk about that a lot, because I think it is kind of that missing piece that so many of us just forget and don't realise. That voice you have is so much more important and impactful than any other voice that you will hear from somebody else. So, that journey you're on of learning to be self-compassionate in your situation is, really remarkable. And I think it's something that speaks volumes about the importance of it, and how that can actually begin to then give you a springboard to look at what else you need to give yourself to be able to move forward and grow and build back strong health and well-being, to be able to live your life. And as you said, you want to help people who are in similar situations to where you've been to still live a good life, to have a high quality of life and one that they enjoy.
Yeah, I think the self-compassion piece really ties into limiting beliefs as well. And so we all have a set of beliefs, and if a thought doesn't match that belief, it's like we don't want to accept it. So I like to think of it as those toys that you have for kids that are shape sorters.
Yeah.
The triangle goes in the triangle. So you have these set of beliefs, and I don't know, say my beliefs are squares. And if the shape of this particular belief is not a square, my mind doesn't accept it. And so, just those limiting beliefs can have such a huge impact on what we let in. And being self-compassionate, I think, really helps to allow more shapes into your life, different beliefs, instead of just having this very narrow, well, I only think this, and I'm this bad person, so I can't accept that thought that I did something good.
Yeah, that's a really good way to explain and visualize it. So if anyone is listening and, whatever their situation is, as you said, we all struggle with things, and the stuff that we might be experiencing to us is real, and it has an impact, and it can, have a really big impact on your overall well-being and happiness. If someone is feeling really stuck right now in their life, has been through something very challenging and still struggling to learn how to cope with that, and knows that is having a real impact on how they're living and enjoying their life, are there any kind of simple steps that you would say to take right now that someone could do to start to make that small progress forward, to see that there is a way to come out the other side and to grow and develop?
I would say the first step is figuring out what's important to you. And even if that's one word. So for me personally, one of my biggest, most important things in my life is love. And I could have nothing in the world, but if I have love, then I'm like partly complete. Like my heart is happy if I have love. And another thing for me is nature. So figuring out those things that your heart truly knows that you deeply value, and then trying to bring something into your day that really brings in that value. Even if you can, a lot of us are very, very busy. Even if you can just give yourself 5-10 minutes where you can connect with that value. So maybe you have a dog, like spend 5 minutes with your dog experiencing love. Or if movement is something that's really important to you, spend 5 minutes going outside just to give you that outlet of feeling like you're who you are at the core. So I would say kind of more of a reflection on, okay, where am I at? Why am I feeling stuck? And what do I need? And you may not know what you need, because if you're stuck, you're stuck, you can't see it. So then going down into what do I value most in my life? If I could have one thing, what would I pick? And then dedicating a time in your life or in every single day to spend, even if it's just a few minutes, to give you that momentary peace of feeling unstuck.
Yeah, I really like that, because that is something that every one of us can do. As you said, 5 minutes. And I loved, what you said there just about if you have a dog and that's your thing, if it's that companionship, if that's something that really matters to you, then that that's going to give you something back to make you feel joy or gratitude or just calmness, whatever it delivers that, as you said, that you need in at that moment. And gradually adding those things on so that you're giving yourself more of them. And is that how you found it worked for you, that once you'd kind of hit that real low point and you'd attempted suicide and you saw that you needed to make a change to be able to continue and, start to feel well again and be able to cope with every day? Was it about starting with, that one thing and then it became easier to add more things onto that and gradually feel more better?
I think it did. I think leaning on other people that I knew I could trust played a very big part in it as well. And there wasn't, I have a lot of loved ones, but there wasn't many people that I could kind of trust with those thoughts. And I have two incredible psychologists, one of them trauma specific. The other gentleman is somebody who I've worked with for years. And, I would say having that support from him, I owe my life to him. He's incredible. But when I started to make small changes, I couldn't think about, I used to like to run, so I'm going to go outside for 30 minutes and run for 30 minutes. It just wasn't realistic. But I could let my mind go to, I'm going to leave the house and I'm going to go and collect the mail. Because in America, you walk to the mailbox. Or, okay, I'm going to spend 5 minutes sitting outside in the sun. Or I'm going to text a friend. And so just starting small makes it less overwhelming, because I think when you are in that fight flight mode where your brain can't accept anything and you have this brain fog and your brain's spinning with everything, and it's really the tiny things that you can do that make that little bit of a difference to keep you going. And then as you go, you can add on. And, now I have a nice cast because I injured myself. So I haven't been doing as much recently, but I go out twice a day walking my dog now, and normally we'll do an hour, but, rewind back to then, I didn't even want to leave the house.
Yeah.
And so it does evolve, and the pain is still there, but it's very different. And when I was in it and I was stuck in it, I felt like it could never be any different. And I think it still will continue to evolve, because over time, new things come in, things happen, and it's very much like a roller coaster of up and down and waves. And start small, set yourself up for something that's going to work. And if it doesn't work, then it's not a pass or fail. If you don't do it, it's not a chance to say you didn't do what you said you were going to do, because that's the other thing. I think we kind of jump on the bandwagon of the inner critic, and then it's like, well, I said I was going to walk 5 minutes today and I didn't. So letting it being fluid, trying things like, well, I used to like to take a bath, but then you take a bath and you're like, I don't like doing that anymore. So being open-minded to discover what feels good to you.
Yeah, very wise words and very inspiring as well, because you're right, it is about the small steps for anyone, whether it's someone who's simply just feeling stuck because of how their life is and the busyness of it and knows they need to change something, or it's someone who is really struggling because of an event or a loss that they've experienced. It can feel like there's this huge mountain in front of you that's impossible to climb. But when you do just break it down into those small steps, you recognise that you've achieved those small steps. And I love your point about fluidity. If it doesn't work or it doesn't feel right or you don't do it, it doesn't mean that you just wipe the slate and go, forget it, I'm useless, I can't do this, it's not for me. That's just life. You know, you are still making progress even because you had the intention that you were going to do it, even if it didn't work out. So I think, you know, the words that you used then, how you explained it, were really strong. And I think you're such a strong person, Sarah, to be at this point and, you know, building a brand new business, have so much, you know, in your heart and your mind about where you want to take that business and Madeleine's story. And I really do look forward to seeing you share this story, because I know that's part of your mission and you're right at the very beginning of that. But I'm sure, you know, that the story and the way you come across and the impact you want to have is going to really resonate with people and help you achieve the dream that you've got about bringing Madeleine's energy to life in other people's lives. So honestly, thank you so much for sharing it. Yeah, I'd just love you to let people know, again, just the business that you're setting up. If they do want to connect with you, I'll obviously put everything into the show notes. But yeah, if you just want to let people know where they can reach out, and if anyone does want to connect or come to you for any advice, how they can reach you, Sarah.
Of course, yeah. So my website, you can find me at wellshinecoaching.com. You feel free, if you wanted to email me, you can email me at sarah@wellshinecoaching.com. And on my website, there's also a free self-care guide. So if there's anybody that's kind of struggling with what self-care is to them, how they want to incorporate self-care into their daily routine, there's a handout that includes a self-care assessment and then goes on to kind of some reflection questions to look at crafting some kind of self-care routine that feels good to them.
Oh, that's brilliant. And we'll pop the link to that into the notes so people can go directly to that and download the guide, because I'm sure that's something a lot of people need. And, you know, just to kind of wrap up, Sarah, on that note of self-care, looking now forward at where you are, what's the biggest thing that you still want to work on with regard to your own self-care?
Oh, that's a really good question, Nicola, because there's quite a lot going on right now. I think one of my biggest things is still working on the self-compassion and the self-worth, because it is a challenge. And I think allowing myself to be in a space where the other people within my life have less impact on how I go about my days is a big thing for me. So having that confidence within myself when a relationship or some kind of interaction with somebody else may not go as I would like it to go, and being able to have the strength and power and trust in myself that it's okay if I'm not in agreement with somebody, or like there's some kind of conflict going on.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think that's something that a lot of people would probably like to have as part of, you know, their lifestyle and self-worth and self-belief and self-love as well. Because I think, as you mentioned earlier, it can be a real struggle to get to that place about you. But when you can build that and not allow external people and those relationships and events to make you feel things that really do affect how well and healthy you are, I think that's a very powerful place to be in. So yeah, thanks again, Sarah. Really enjoyed speaking to you, and just so much compassion and empathy for your story.
Thank you, Nicola, and thank you for having me. I've really loved talking today, and I feel like we have a good energy, and it's been an absolute pleasure. And really, I just want you to know how grateful I am for giving me the opportunity.
Oh, you're so welcome. Yeah, really welcome.